So there are new questions emerging about the death of a Texas honor student and standout athlete. He was shot in the head by police on Saturday night. The Balch Springs Police Department now admits that the officer's description of what happened doesn't match the body camera footage, that the car the teen was riding in, he was a passenger in, was not coming aggressively at officers.
I can tell you that I do have questions in relation to my observation on the video and what is consistent with the policies and core values of the Balch Springs Police Department. The actions of this officer are being carefully examined by the department. This officer has been removed from all duties and placed on leave.
We have learned some new information that we just mentioned to our viewers, that police are now saying that the vehicle he was in was not headed aggressively towards officers. It was going away from. And I know this matches the account of what you and the family have been saying all along, that these young kids were attending a party, and when they heard shots fired, they were trying to get the heck out of there.
Yeah. You know what? Before the chief made the retraction of the statement, he stopped by and he spoke with the family. And the family questioned him directly. I had a chance to question him directly about why that false narrative was being pushed forward in the media. He came off as a very sincere law enforcement officer who wanted to arrive at justice. And we challenged him that if that was his sincere desire, then tell the truth. He told us that he planned to retract the statement, and I give him much respect for being brave enough to do that on a national platform.
An honest cop. Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. As you see, they're still killing our youth. 15-year-old, honest student, first year freshman in high school. But this is another sad case of out partying, hear shots. But this cop took a rifle and shot at this kid. Welcome to the show, Basir. Welcome back, brother. I know we had a conversation before this.
Good to be here.
About this
Always.
little rampage here. He's a rogue cop in Texas, yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, the problem is, you know, too many police officers, and of course, you know, Winston will talk about this a lot. They say, oh, it's only a few. Mm-hmm. But as we know, if you take the rotten apple scenario, if you have one rotten apple, it will actually go ahead and spoil the entire bunch. Yep. And that's what happens. It's not the individuals, it's the system. Okay. It's the system of policing that is used in this country. And we have to go all the way back to where law enforcement originates in this country, which is with the slave patrols. Mm-hmm. Right? It starts with slave patrols, and in many instances, the same things that slave patrols did, police forces do in inner cities around this country on a regular basis. And that is trying to control that African population. That's what the slave patrol did. Mm-hmm. And that's what the police officers do. Stop, question, and frisk. What is that? You're attempting to try to go ahead and control the legal, legitimate movement of citizens in the community.
Even now in Texas, this past week, the governor pushed through legislation allowing police officers in Texas to stop anybody that looks like they might be an immigrant.
Oh, really?
And ask them for documentation. Yeah. This is apartheid. It's the Nazi system. Where are your papers? We can't have this in the United States. In Texas, they had another law. Many of the Mexican laborers were driving. They didn't have insurance. In Texas, if you don't have a car, you can't work.
That's right.
You know, many areas there is no public transportation. So what they would do, they would pull over. They passed a law, if you don't have insurance for your vehicle is impounded.
They're going to seize it.
They weren't stopping white people to see if they had insurance. They were only stopping the Latinos. So they would take the car, which means if they had a job, they could not get to work. There's no way in the world they could get to work. And subsequently, they could lose their job. This system of selective enforcement has to stop. And it needs to come from the federal level down to the state and local level.
Well, with Trump being in office, all these racist policies have been empowered.
Well, look,
It
I
won't
mean, we just
stop
have
here.
we just have to talk about Jeff. They call him Jeff Sessions. This guy's name, he's named after Jefferson Davis and P.T. Beauregard. That means that his parents were Confederates,
Right.
Yeah.
and named him after the president of the Confederacy and the general who won the Battle of Bull Run,
Right.
P.T. Beauregard. His name is Jefferson Beauregard Sessions. So now, if his parents felt that way, I mean, this is now, we're going on second, third, fourth, fifth generation. They've probably been Confederates back to the Battle of Bull Run in the beginning of the Civil War.
Well, he's
Absolutely.
a son of Alabama. I
Yeah.
mean, that's
And,
goes
you know,
without saying.
even with Comey just yesterday, they're not even talking about the fact that Jeff Sessions
accused him.
not only recused himself,
Recused
but
himself.
was fired as the director of
Oh,
the
that's
FBI
right.
in the Clinton administration. So you have two people in this administration who were
Wait, say that
summarily
again. Jeff Sessions
Jeff
was-
Sessions was the national director of the FBI under Clinton. Clinton fired him. He told him to, he said if he didn't resign, he'd fire him. What Jeff Sessions was doing, he was using federal funds to put a fence around his house, supposedly
right.
for
I forgot
security.
about that.
There were no
I forgot
sensors or
about
anything
that.
on the fence.
What year are we talking?
Back in the 90s. So here's a guy that was kicked out of the Clinton administration. Trump brought him back in his administration. You have the General Flynn, who was kicked out of the Obama administration,
Right.
and Trump brought. This is the cesspool. This is the swamp that he's talking about. He's not draining
drain
it.
the swamp.
He's filling it with all the sludge. And Jeff Sessions now sits as the Attorney General and is involved in this charade of bringing up the morale of the FBI and getting better service to the people. No, it's very obvious that.
And law enforcement. I mean, Jeff Sessions, you know, has said that he wants to review all of the consent decrees that were actually established under the Obama administration and the Department of Justice, Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch. Now, we've got several cities that have entered into consent decrees, Baltimore being the
Yes.
last one after
Right,
Freddie Gray.
right.
Okay, but we've also had Chicago. You know,
Ferguson.
we've had that Ferguson as well. Yes. And in each of these instances, the Obama Justice Department determined that they were going to try to deal with these things systemically. And in doing so, what they did is they entered into consent decrees where the cities involved and the police departments involved, that they were going to actually go ahead and cooperate in regards to changing policies and procedures that were literally unconstitutional.
Yes.
Now, Sessions is saying he wants to review all of this stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, what are our chances that, as we started out with this 15-year-old kid that was shot by this officer, supposed to have been a rogue cop? It's understanding that he was a wild
they
man
charged
anyway.
him already. They
But
charged
what
him
are the
with-
chances? They charged him with murder.
With murder,
because
not homicide,
He
with
lied.
murder.
He made a statement that
And
the
he knew what he
car
was doing was
backing up.
wrong. He admitted
and,
it.
And the piece that I showed, the cop was owning up to the fact that he watched a body cam video and saw that the kids were leaving the
right.
premises. Nobody had a record in the car. Everybody was clean. And the guy shot. So what do you think of the chances with Sessions at Attorney General of getting justice out of this case?
Well, you know, the issue is this, is that while the Attorney General is the head law enforcement person in the country, is that, of course, we have legal issues in regards to the states and municipalities.
Okay.
And that we have to remember that, you know, these same
They might
Confederates
not get that far?
they believe in states' rights, supposedly, all
Okay,
the time.
all
So
right,
they believe
all
that
right.
the locality is supposed to go ahead and
But
make
this
these
is
determinations.
Texas. This is Texas.
It is
You
Texas.
think we'll get justice in Texas?
Well, you know, I
Just
have
might?
to give them credit. That town
Okay.
has moved quicker that New York City has ever moved in a case. They suspended him. Once the chief saw the video, hey, relieve this man of his weapons. Next day, 2 days later, he's charged with murder. That has never happened in New York City. So if he is charged, he is already charged. He will be indicted and tried summarily. He has already made admissions to the fact that he knew that what he was doing was wrong.
Oh, he has?
He knew.
He has?
Yes. So there is no question. They're not even going for the low case of a homicide or manslaughter. They're going for the murder with intent, with the intent, and also considering the fact he used a rifle.
Right.
All right? The accuracy of a rifle is far greater than that of a handgun.
Why would we be using a rifle?
Well, we don't know. There is no justifiable reason.
Why would you bring a rifle to a party that was unruly or noisy as law enforcement personnel?
Well, in the South, they carry rifles in the cars. They carry shotguns in the cars. Right. And now they're carrying AR-15s. Got to remember,
You're kidding.
They've got them in some states. They carry them. You don't know what we carry here in New York. All right?
Really?
So, now,
what's in the trunk?
When emergency service shows up, they're prepared for everything. Suicides, barricade. They're prepared for everything. All right?
ISIS, huh?
So, that too. So, there is technology to look at you inside your apartment from the street with an infrared scanner. Even if they can't see you, they'll pick you up behind the bricks and take you out. You don't know what is available because what has been happening over the last 25 years, police departments have become federalized. All right? So we work jointly with the federal agencies, with the FBI, Joint Terrorist Task Force, ICE, and other entities. So the equipment is there.
We have to remember, you remember when Ray Kelly said that if there was any kind of repeat of 9/11, that NYPD had equipment that could go ahead and take airplanes down. He said it, and then he kind of had to retract it. Because, you know, this, of course, comes from Homeland Security and also from surplus military equipment. You know, that, you know, once you go ahead and you have these budgets, which are so large in many instances, they go ahead and they get all of this equipment. We saw in Ferguson. We saw the militarization of police departments, local police departments, where they came out in armored personnel carriers and all different kinds of things. I mean, it's as if there was a war going on. And of course, the people respond to that.
Right. John and Al's sporting goods store back in the 60s, when they had that hostage situation,
Surprise.
They rolled up, he's here, they rolled up with an armored personnel carrier. And that was in the 1960s in New York. People had no idea of what the police department had then. It is far more advanced now than it was then. But even at that, for that officer to arrive on the scene with a rifle, there was no report of shots being fired, anything like that.
No excuse.
Overzealous. He responded beyond the necessary call. Nobody attacked him. He didn't call for backup that I know of. And this young boy is in the car with his brother and another friend, and they're leaving. They're getting away from the calamity. They're not staying. They're getting away.
As they had been instructed by their father.
Right.
Their father had said, if in fact there's anything goes on at a party that's wrong, you get out of it.
We had the same scenario in Westchester a few years ago, too.
Let's go for some wishful thinking about impeachment. The next roll-in is on impeachment.
Guilty.
This is put out a couple of months ago by Joy Reid and the Congresswoman. But let's play the roll-in and we'll get Professor Jeffries on this set. He's somewhere close to being...
Your tweet this week that got lots and lots of retweets about Trump's Kremlin clan, lots of people, Kremlin clan. Tell us why you think that your constituents, are they concerned about this Trump-Russia connection still? And do you think that the relevant committees, which are run by Trump's party, by the Republican Party, are doing enough to get to the bottom of it?
Well, as you know, we have both the House and the Senate Intelligence Committees that are really getting started on taking a look at what happened with Russia and how did they get involved in hacking our DNC and our Democrats, et cetera, and wanting to know if there was collusion. I've always said that if they dig deep enough, if they do the kind of investigations that they should be doing, that they're going to find that there was collusion. So I'm not convinced that the House committee is going to do very well with this, but I have more faith in the Senate committee. I think that this has to be done. If you take a look at those who are surrounding this president, both inside his administration and his allies and friends outside of the administration, you'll see all of these connections to oil and to Russia. When you take a look at the fact that they all want to have the sanctions lifted so that they can drill oil in the Arctic. And of course, Tillerson is a part of this. He was the ex-CEO of Exxon, and he negotiated the deal with Putin to be able to drill in the Arctic. They all will benefit from it. Just take a look at what Flynn is doing. Follow Flynn, follow Manafort. Follow these guys who have some connection, and it's been shown. Flynn has lied. He's been caught. He did not register as a foreign agent. He's taken money that he did not disclose, and I think it's all there, and we should dig deeper. Yes, I think that my constituents and others should care about this, but this is what I think is so important. I don't think when the truth comes out that even the right-wing conservatives who are defending Trump at this point are going to be able to stand with him. They claim to be patriots, and they claim that they're more patriotic than a lot of other people. We're going to see who the real patriots are when we unveil this collusion that I believe is there. And I think in the final analysis, they're going to have to move away from him, and we will see that he will be in a position where he will meet the standards and the criteria for higher crimes and misdemeanors, and I maintain that's where impeachment comes in.
Wow. Congresswoman Mac.
As you see, the ladies gave a rundown of what's available. You watch Rachel Maddow any hour, any day, and she lays it out. And yet this man goes ahead and fires the man that's investigating him. I mean, what a set of
Cojones.
cojones, huh?
I mean, what came out today is that Comey had actually gone to the Assistant Attorney General, this Rod Rothstein, and it said that he needed more money, more resources, more personnel a few days ago. And now, after he did that, now, of course, he's being fired.
But and he's supposed to testify tomorrow.
Right. But he will.
And he wouldn't tell him what he was going to say.
But he will become world famous. I mean, this is going to make history. So that, in spite of all this that we're talking about, there's a bigger plan that's going to emerge in terms.
But so Trump is impeached. Spence is president. Spence pardons everybody.
Yes.
Well, that's the way it would go.
Is that what we're in store for?
That's the way it would go. But the fact is that Trump, Sessions, Jared, Flynn, they could wind up in prison. They're being intensely examined for espionage.
Okay.
One thing that Trump fails to realize, he thinks he's on The Apprentice. You see, this punk, he sends a letter. On the TV, he says, "You're fired." You know, he's not man enough to confront Comey to his face. He sends him a letter while he's 3,000 miles away. He sends a letter to his office. So this investigation is not going to die. The agents who are in the FBI understand this. The patriots, the true patriots of this country are not the generals, they're not the politicians, they're not the people with the lapel flags. They are the people working in intel for the United States government. Their objective is to protect this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They will take down a president. They don't care about the presidency. you've been in the military. The objective is the mission.
Yeah.
The mission is the preservation of the country. They don't care about the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. They will take down whoever needs to be taken down if they're found to be an enemy of the state. What Trump has been doing over the years, his own son said it out of his mouth, we're using Russian money, we got all this Russian money coming in, we don't need money.
That's right. That's recorded.
The collusion here is going to be delved into. This is not going to be something that's going to be resolved in 3, 4, 5, 6 months. All right? They are going to work on this from the beginning to the end. They're going back and looking at all the muds of all these
But
phones.
meanwhile, what happens to the world? This
The
man's
world
on
is
the
gonna go
verge of
on.
war.
The world is
He's
gonna go
sending
on.
troops to Afghanistan.
The world is going to go on.
He's picking a fight with the
The
Koreans.
FBI doesn't have anything to do with that. They're working on their job.
Right.
They're looking, your phone, I don't care what phone you've ever had, we have the MUDs on it, the message unit directives. Every phone call you ever made, the day, the date, the time, the duration, whether it was an old, young people don't know what I'm talking about, a rotary phone.
Right.
That's right.
Every call you made is logged. And to every destination, it's logged. It's on record. They have everything. They're going to go through every call made to every single person. And they're going to build a chart of contacts. From Donald Trump, his son-in-law, who it was a merger of families for business. You know, that's more than what that was. Because Jared's family has far more money than Trump has. So they're going to take their time and they're going to put all the threads together. And you're going to see more bodies being brought out of the closet. Everybody involved is not there yet that you know of. But these guys in the FBI and the way in which their director was summarily disposed of, watch.
Yeah, that's a kick
Watch.
in the butt.
They're not working for the President of the United States. They work for the United States.
With
And
all
the beautiful
this-
thing is that we're focusing on the individuals and the circumstances around individuals. But the real focus is on the global
what's
system
going on.
of
Yeah.
maneuvering money, laundering money,
That's right.
and putting false investments together. And so I think it may be too deep to let all of it come out. At some point, they're going to have to say, well, this is the limit we go to. Billions and trillions of dollars are being laundered through development. And the hotels are a perfect case in point.
Right.
So there's no way, and he himself said he loves debt, because with debt you can do a whole lot of
That's right.
maneuvering and messing with money.
I mean, that's
People's
why he's
money.
going bankrupt, the number of times that
That's
he's going
right.
bankrupt. I mean, remember Atlantic City. I mean, Atlantic City was a disaster in
That's
terms
right.
of
His
Trump.
overseas projects, most of them have
Yeah, we
failed.
might mention the North Arctic, when this $500 billion deal was put
That's
on
right.
hold in 2014.
Right.
This oil pipeline.
Tillerson and the Russian and Putin.
Right.
The pipes.
And then after it was all said and done, they still tried to run it to the Treasury last month.
Right.
Try to get the sanctions lifted on that deal.
That's the way
which
the
nobody
system works.
heard any
Right.
too much about it.
But you're
they
not
still
hearing
tried to-
anything about anything other than
Right.
Trump. That pipeline deal,
One of the
they
biggest,
said, oh,
biggest
we got to
deals
have
in the
pipes
history of
made
the world.
here. The
Right.
pipes were not
It was
made
the
here.
biggest
It's
deal
one
in the
of the
history of the
biggest
world.
economic developmental processes in the history of the world.
$500 billion.
$500 billion.
But it's more oil. That was just part of it.
That's just
That's
part
just
of it. And the collateral.
The company that made the pipes is a Canadian company, not an American company. The pipes have already been made. They were contracted out and made. Now, Obama stopped the project. Trump restarted the project. He's talking about, we got to have pipes made, steel pipes made here. That ain't happening because this contract was signed, sealed, and delivered. The pipes
But that has
from
nothing
the
to do
company,
with America.
No, nothing. Because the pipes that they're using were made in Canada, but that company is a subsidiary of a Russian steel company.
Ah.
That's right.
All right?
Okay. And
So-
the oil, once it comes down the whole to Louisiana, is being refined and shipped overseas.
Well, some of it is used here, and of course we sell. We sell more
Right.
oil now than Saudi Arabia is selling.
That's true.
Okay.
All right? But there aren't going to be that many jobs coming through that operation other than the welding. After the welding is done, those pipes go, it's the Colonial Pipeline, and it'll come out in Houston or it'll come out in Louisiana, where the tanks are, they can load it onto ships and send it out, or it will be transferred locally through
How long do you
country.
think it's going to take to get rid of Trump?
I mean, it's hard to say. It's unfortunately, as you see, one of the things that he's been doing is that he is somebody who is very, very clear in regards to being deceptive and distracting people on a regular basis.
Right.
This firing of Comey
It's a distraction.
is a distraction.
Right.
And he's done this several times already. I mean, he's only been in office since January.
3 months.
and he's distracted people, you know, several different times.
Half of the 100 days has been a distraction.
Then, of course, the other thing is that he's started campaigning already for 2020.
As though he's going to be
He
there.
goes up. Now, he campaigns well, I mean, as far as the people who like him. But in terms of governing, that's a whole nother story. He's admitted now, well, this is a little more difficult than I first thought.
That's right.
He's had several conversations where he said, well, this is a little more complex than I knew. You know, I was talking about Korea, and then when the Chinese premier went ahead and briefed me and told me about it, this is a little more complex than I thought about.
10 minutes, he got the
But
complexity.
Obama warned him about Flint. Obama warned him about Korea. Obama warned him about almost everything, I'm sure. He said, heads up on this,
But
buddy.
listen, you know, once you're a racist, and
Yeah.
look, you got to look at all the people, all the photographs. The only time we've seen any people of African ancestry around Trump, I mean, there've been
Omarosa.
That's right.
Uncle Ben.
when the
Uncle
heads of the historically black colleges and universities went and had this meeting, which was probably an error. That was
a photo
another
shoot.
time. And then other than that, the only other people of African ancestry you're going to see around him are going to be security.
Right.
Oh, he
people
stated
who-
on the campaign, he said, what do you have to lose?
Yeah.
You're being shot in the street as it is, you might as well vote for me.
And what happened to Uncle Ben? We haven't seen
Oh, he's in the
anything.
project
He's in the
now.
project. He's waiting for the elevator.
The condo,
The elevators are
The
broken.
thing is, the
Gentrify
process
that
may
project.
go several
It's a
years
mess.
simply because there's too many loose ends that have to be connected. But they can't go truly deep because it would expose the system of this predator capitalism in its worst aspects. And so he would be a small sacrifice to try to keep the system, the front of the system. Here he complains about Hillary going to Salomon Brothers, and then he brings in the Salomon Brothers to run the government.
Right. And he was working with Deutsche Bank, with the Russians, moving money through Deutsche Bank and getting loans
I
from
mean,
Deutsche
It's a
Bank.
symbol of hypocrisy. I mean,
But
that's,
not only hypocrisy, but I mean, this is American mediocrity. I mean, you look at all of the people that he's gone ahead and gotten in his administration. These are mediocre people. These are people who, in many instances, have no expertise in the areas that they're working.
That's right.
And again, the other thing we have to say is that since they're all white, we have to talk about white mediocrity as well.
That's right.
What about all the people that voted for him? What do they say?
No, but see, there was a part of America that history had passed them by. And so he was able to say, let's make America great again. That was the signal to those white folks that history had passed them by.
Right.
And so he was saying, we're going to make America great and white again. And so we had at least the imagery of something happening for us because we had a president in the White House. He had a beautiful black woman in the White House. He had a couple of black angels floating around the White House, and he appointed a couple of people. So these people really saw that not only did the capitalist system pass them by, but just on the political system, here are black folks moving on up. And so it's a big psychosis in this nation that we have to deal with. And it's great. This is the best time. These are the worst of times because of what's happening to white folks, and these are the best of times.
The worst of times.
In terms of what we can do if we get it together.
Tale of two cities.
And the solution for us is to
It would have been a little
Africanize our
easier.
lives.
It would have been a little easier if we had helped Hillary get in there.
Well,
it would have been a little
that's
easier.
that's a family discussion. It's not for TV. It's not for
A lot
TV
of different
now.
kinds of ways.
But we've got to Africanize our lives, and I have
All right, let's go
before
to
me.
a subject matter that we're all
Yes,
fond
Dr. John
of.
Henry Clark.
And I was gonna before him I was gonna bring in my favorite hero, Gil Noble. Run the video on Gil Noble. And this is Gil Noble talking about Malcolm. I think you saw this last time we were
Yes.
here. Do you have that video on Gil?
My first inoculation was Dr. King. And then that led me to Adam Powell and a lot of the people. But I was put off by Malcolm X.
Why?
Because what he was saying and the way he was saying it was too blunt. It was dangerous. And you didn't say those things in those days. I told you, we had been socialized as kids to get around wrong, not to confront it. And Malcolm spoke in very declarative terms, and he said some terrible things about white people that we thought, but you would never express it, you see. He talked about the way this country was not a democracy, but a hypocrisy, and he talked about what had been happening to us down south and up south. And he was not shy. He had and he was very, very intimidating. I'm man enough to admit it. There are a lot of people who are my age who will speak, you know, with love about Malcolm as though it had always been that way. But that's not so. He scared a lot of us to death. And then, mind you, I had this apartment, a bachelor apartment on Convent Avenue, and I'd been having a lot of fun, you know. And here he comes talking about a different way of life. First of all, he dropped his last name. Well, we had been socialized to take great pride in our last name. The more European it sounded, the better. There was not a flinch about, you know, noble. Oh, that's wonderful. If it wasn't French enough, you'd put an ETT on it, you know, to make it sound more French. And so here's a man who dropped his good last name and replaced it with an X. I thought the man was crazy. And then he talked about discipline. And he talked
self-discipline?
Self-discipline. He said that we do not believe in drinking. And at the time I would have a taste. And he said that we don't smoke cigarettes with or without a label on them. And I would smoke, you know, with a label.
Yes.
And he said, we don't eat pork. Well, you know, I love me some ribs. And then he said, we don't fornicate.
Yes.
And so psychologically I said, Malcolm, I'll see you later.
Yes.
You know, and all. But what he was doing in deprecating whiteness, I came to understand later that he was rearranging the balance that we needed, because we had glorified whiteness and deprecated blackness. And so he was tilting, using exaggerated terms, to give us a sense of self and to take whites down a little as they needed to be.
Yes.
Sounds very relevant.
You have to realize that this is my idol. I mean, the reason why I'm sitting here right now is because of this man, Gil Noble. I had him on the show here a couple of times, and I was just elated. My star, my, you know, Messiah had arrived. And I was exactly in that same predicament in the early 60s when I got out of service, 64, 65. Integration was on the uprise. I was working for Chase Manhattan Bank. Only black in the bank, but, you know, I was lucky.
It wasn't that dark.
You know, well, you know, whatever it took to get there, man. God, man, they didn't care what complexion you were. I was presentable, you know.
Right.
I was an ex-Marine, and I was a serviceman, and they admired and respected that. And I had no record, all right? So I was clean. So I was a perfect token. And that's the first time I was a token. But Gil Noble was my idol, and that's what we thought. Stay straight, and you dodged the bullet. And Malcolm came out heavy, too heavy. For me, I mean, I got to stop fornicating, stop drinking. And New York, I know you were in Newark, but New York City was open holiday. I mean, you could have a ball in New York. And like Gil said, Convent Avenue in those days, they had the frat houses right there on 141st Street. Man, you had every weekend.
They had them on Convent and 141st
And on 41st Street.
Yes.
I mean, that whole neighborhood was jumping, and the young girls and girls was having a good time. So he wasn't thinking, and you had Sherman's barbecue up on 151st Street in Amsterdam.
Right.
Or the meat would fall off the bone. Thing is looking good. Talking about we party. Integration was in. All right? So nobody thought about going the other route. What do you say?
Some of us did, you know, but then again,
Well,
I guess we were a
younger.
little bit younger. We were a little bit younger, and the kind of influences, I guess, were slightly different. You know, when Brother Malcolm was assassinated, I was 14 years old. I was going to be 15 years old.
I was 24.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, we were a little bit younger.
Yeah.
But,
10
you
years.
know, we kind of knew and understood that something was going on that was important. You know, the Nation of Islam did a lot of, you know, back in the day I lived in the Bronx. I live in the Bronx again, interestingly enough, right?
My condolences.
But what happened is the Nation of Islam did a lot of organizing and a lot of work in the Bronx. You know, we would go to Pelham Bay Park to go in and have picnics.
That's right.
And folks, the brothers would be out there selling Muhammad Speaks.
Right.
So we would go ahead and buy it, and we would look at it, and we like, well, wait a minute. You know, some of this stuff is making some kind of sense to us. And, you know, that had a profound influence on us. You know, not so much that all of us went into the Nation, because, you know, we were dealing with some of the same concerns that you and Brother Gil had. Drinking? Yeah, we drank. You know, the issues in terms of that. Fornication? Well, hey, you know, this is another issue
Had to
here.
chase girls. Oh, my goodness. That was your manhood.
Hey, listen.
So you thought.
Well, we some
Still
of us,
is, man. No, come on.
Beverly, you're listening to this.
some of us, some of us had a different experience.
Okay.
And so, and for me, it was definitely different. Because I went to Europe in 59, 60. So that opened up the world to me. And instead of me trying to think that my life was to be a lawyer and save the race and civil rights, here is this whole world that's opening up.
You went to Europe in 59.
In 59, 60. And the person that I met in Paris that helped change my life was Alioune Diop and his wife, Madame Diop, and they were the mentors of Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop. So I met all three of them in 1959-60.
Wow.
And so then I knew there was a whole nother thing that I need to be a part of. And but since I was slated to go to law school and I, you know, wanted to be Thurgood Marshall's assistant, et cetera, so I went to NYU Law School when I came back home. But before in September, but by October, I wrote this article on dealing with a closer look at the world. That we're being prepared to be a cog in the corporate structure. We're trying to find a niche. The world is moving with technology and nationalism and communism and African independence. That's the article that I wrote in October 1960. And then the month later, I meet Operation Crossroads Africa. It's interesting that Dr. Clark's book is Africans at the Crossroads. Well, for me, in October and November, football weekend, I went out to the college and I met this black man, and that changed my life.
Okay.
I'm in the college, 1,500 white students, because when I went there in 1955, there was only 2 black students, and that hadn't changed much. Which
college was this?
Lafayette College in Eastern Pennsylvania. And Robinson puts the challenge of Africa. And I'm in virtual tears of joy. And the relationship between him and I became such that it was like father and son, African uncle. Little did I know the year before, my wife was Dr. Rosalynn Jeffries was a part of his church right here in Harlem on Morningside. And she had in 1960, when I was in Europe, she was in Africa, in Nigeria. She was in Nigeria before it became independent. She was there the summer of 1960. It became independent in October of 1960. And so when he made that challenge, I knew that he was talking, not to the 1,500 white boys, he was talking to me. And I accepted the challenge. But I finished the year in law school, but I already knew that I was heading toward Africa. And in '61, I went to Africa. When I came back, that's when I met Rosalynn. And then I went again 62 and 63. Ivory Coast in 61, Senegal 62, Guinea in 63. 64, I was stationed in Accra, heading all of West Africa at the time that Malcolm was there.
And the first independent African nation was what year? 1960?
Well, the first one...
Was it Ghana?
No, we have to claim our history. 1952, there was a revolution in Egypt. Gamal Nasser and General Agib. For the first time, black men ruled in Egypt for 2,000 years. So 52 is this whole 50-year turning point of history
well,
that I go into.
They don't consider that Africa.
It is. 52,
Very
Egypt,
Nubia.
and Gamal Nasser and Agib were among the blackest of the leaders that had that revolution. 53 was Iran. 54 was Dien Bien Phu in Indochina.
But was that colonized? Was that colonized?
They had been colonized for a couple thousand years. They were Albanian rulers in Egypt. But at any rate, the explosion of change was actually taking place, and Malcolm is a part of that culmination. 55, Dien Bien Phu. 54, Dien Bien Phu. 55, Bandung, that the new African nations and the new Asian nations are coming together. And Harlem is represented by Adam Clayton Powell. Right. So he leaves Harlem when he's getting his thing going politically, and he shows up to represent Black America. And so, and he also, as we know later, had a special relationship with Malcolm. And so 56, you had the Sudan independence. 57 is the West African independence of Ghana. 58 is Guinea, with Ghana helping Guinea to sustain. 59 is Cuba. In 1960, there's an explosion of new nations. 61, 62, that continues, and it spreads to the Caribbean, and then it spreads to East Africa. In other words, that whole history before Malcolm is taken out of here was the unfinished revolution, and that's what Dr. Clark is talking about. The unfinished revolution of Garvey, the unfinished revolution of Lumumba, the unfinished revolution of Malcolm, the unfinished revolution of Du Bois and Maboya. And so that's why this book has just been brought out again. It was published in '91, and this is the new edition of it, republished. And so we're telling our folks, get on a good foot and get some of that history. And when Malcolm was moving around Africa in '64, I was moving around Africa in '64, but I didn't come in from Mecca and then go to Cairo and then go to Algeria and then go to Morocco and then go to Senegal, Guinea, and then Ghana and down to Nigeria. I was in West Africa and was making my contact to set up programs in Ghana, in Guinea, in Mali, in Ivory Coast. So Roz and I got married in November 1969 in Harlem. And she grew up with Malcolm because she lived around the corner from the mosque, and she used to go to the laundry and for her mother and for the family, but she would be mesmerized by this black man on the corner talking all this unusual stuff. And little did we know that she would be one of the first to go to Africa and feel the stuff and taste the stuff. And then we stayed in the U.S. until I passed my orals and was ready to go overseas. And as we got ready to go overseas, that's when Malcolm was taken away from us. So we delayed going overseas until he was murdered in February the 21st,
65.
And 65. And we went in March 65 to live in Africa for a couple of years. So I'm now writing my memoirs and my diary in relationship to Malcolm's. And it's a fantastic experience. To talk about the Congo in '64. Who the hell goes to the Congo in '64? And talk about getting to the Congo. Reverend Robinson said there's too much chaos in the Congo, Leopoldville. So in order for you to go there, you're going to have to go through the Congo, Brazzaville, across the river. And so I flew into Brazzaville, made my contacts in Brazzaville, and then went over to Leopoldville. I have all these notes, and it's a fantastic thing because there were African Americans working with the UN trying to stabilize the Congo. Our great sister, Inez Smith Reed, was the twin brother of George Smith,
Twin sister.
twin sister of George Smith. He lived on 125th Street in those garden apartments where Reverend Robinson lived. He became a judge. They both graduated Yale. But she was working with the UN along with Shirley Barnes, who is now a U.S. ambassador. So it's unbelievable to see, and they were all crossroaders. Inez and George went when Rosin went in 1960. Shirley went a little later. So this linkage, this fertilization, this link with African experience, for us was deep. By the time Malcolm epitomized this, because he had formed, he had gone to, he had been a part of the OAU. And that was 63.
How do we relate all this to the young people watching?
That there is a struggle. And if there is no struggle, there's no progress. And there is an unfinished revolution of African peoples who have moved from being a colonized people, enslaved and dehumanized, to standing at the front of the human family.
Well, how do you
there
explain,
are now 55
how do you
African
explain
nations.
after all this progress, and 2009,
I'm assuming your
2008,
question, they got our mind, and we got to get it back and Africanize it. And when we Africanize the mind, then you got to start Africanizing the behind, etc.
We got to the point that 2008, we had a black man, half black, half white, okay, run for the president. I call him a blessing from God because of the fact that he had the experience of being exposed on all different fronts.
Yes.
All right? He didn't have the experience that we had as a youth. He was born and raised in Hawaii. I had to travel to Hawaii to understand his temperament. And once you get there, there's no way you can be mad at anybody. When you see this country and you're raised in that environment, I don't care what complexion you are, just to be in God's country. I mean, that place is so heavenly.
And then Indonesia is a special space that he was raised in.
Okay.
So he had Honolulu, he had Asia.
But here he
Asia
comes
that we didn't
back
understand.
to America. He knew his roots. His father left his mother to go back to Africa, all right? As a young woman in Africa, she was 18 when he was born, all right? So the father cut out and he couldn't take her back to Africa, okay? So, in reverse. All right, so he grows up, he becomes a lawyer, he's a Yale professor. He chooses after graduation to go to Chicago and become a community organizer on the south side of Chicago.
But who was there?
Michelle.
Michelle
Somebody
was there.
he had gone to law
Michelle
school
was
with
there.
and who was ahead of him.
A sister that taught him how to be whatever.
Well,
they
opened
complement each other.
African-American door for him to combine
Because
his
of the struggle
Asian
of his father,
and,
working
African
every
door.
day, being hard workers, and doing it the right
But
way.
before you have him in Chicago,
he was in New
doing
York.
his work, he was in New York. He graduated Columbia University.
Right.
And while at Columbia University, he was doing a lot of the things that Gil was talking about.
Oh, really?
He was. But he was looking for something black. And he made his way from Columbia, that special mile that links Morningside Heights with Hamilton Heights, where City College is. And he actually came to City College and spent the year, 1983, he spent the year working with the Nyberg program. Professor Smalls and Professor Scobie, all of them remember him. But at that point, NYPIRG was a pressure group which had a lot of activist white women there. And so, but I was not there at that time because Dr. Clark had given me orders. He said, Len Jeffries, Diop's great book has come out, Civilization and Barbarism. We can't wait 20 years to have this French book edition in English. You've got to take a sabbatical leave. I couldn't do it in '81 because we were in the middle of the Black Studies program expansion. I couldn't do it. And I had gone to Egypt with Dr. Ben in '81, so I had another whole dimension. In '82, we had formed these organizations, including National Council for Black Studies. We had conferences with them. '83 is when I said I could take time off, and I went to try to translate the Diop book. That's when, so I missed him, but Scobie told me, you can't take a year off, Len Jeffries, get back here. We got to wage war. They're trying to destroy the program. So I cut short my stay in Europe. But he was at the City College trying to get his blackness. And then he went on to Harvard and then to Chicago.
You might speak on Akeem Jeffries. I mean, he's doing a bang-up job here.
Who's that?
Your nephew.
Who's that?
Your nephew. He's representing the Jeffries.
Yeah, but
him with Obama together. I mean, well, I see this. This is nothing but a test for us, you know, Trump, because Trump was the lead devil's advocate. I don't know what you could call him. The lead birther. All right. Now he came down and downgraded our brother to the utmost. I mean, a lot of brothers followed him.
And then he called for the death of the Central Park group.
Right. That's
so
how we know him.
A serious history.
All right. When they got their award, he said it was the biggest scam ever. All right, we know Donald Trump.
Right.
But how is it that we're dealing with him now? How are we as black people? I mean, a lot of people are happy that Donald was in office because it gives us a chance to look at what? How we treated Obama and, huh? How do we treat, as black people, our president? How do we treat him?
A lot of people that voted for him are not as happy. A lot of white people, you know, they play the race card.
Right, and they fell for it.
And they fell for it, and they can't get up. Right now, with the health care, you know, it's a critical issue, and you see these town halls across the country. You don't see them in New York, you don't see them in Chicago and Atlanta, but in the quote unquote heartland, people are very disturbed.
That's right.
By his agenda. And it's about time that white people woke up to what Martin said with regard to looking at the content of the character.
Amen.
And stop looking at the skin color of the individual.
That's it.
The white man that they chased after, all these old white men in Congress, all of them been there a long time, need to be gone, they have health care. Every congressman, his family, they have health care for life. After 6 years, they can retire and collect a pension, full salaried for life. They are not the white person in a community somewhere waiting for the medical van to show up, as it does in many communities across the country, because they don't have medical services. If you're not living in an urban area, you may not have medical services. So this one bill, I believe, is going to teach them something, because a nation that does not have health can't progress. Your GDP is going to drop. He can talk about, oh, I'm bringing jobs. He's not bringing any jobs back. He's not bringing factories. They're not coming here. The people don't even know how to operate the machinery. And the factories that do come, they're robotic. All right? So you only need a few people.
Well, I think that what you just said is what I think we should take up as black people. We won't judge them as white people. We'll judge them by the content of their character. We might take up that subject matter and quit being biased ourselves and not look at a person because of his color, but by how he treats you, how he acts up, the content of his character. That would behoove us as a nation of people. But because of the fact that Obama's mother was white, you had a lot of blacks didn't like him. He wasn't black enough. Now look how we treated Obama. The 8 years we were mad at him because of Libya. You had him, the president of white people. I've heard these comments from both of you.
Sharpton himself said he wasn't black enough in the beginning.
Right, but see what
well, look how we treated Malcolm.
Right, but
look how we treated Martin.
You know?
See, now we have a chance to rectify all this stuff by treating people by the content of their character and learn from our mistakes in the past.
White people,
come in
black
with
people
the family
do
argument.
things that are right and wrong. And Obama was not right all the time. And don't think that because a person is black, you shouldn't check them Or you shouldn't criticize what they're doing.
I didn't say anything about criticism.
See, what we have to do now, and this is where we're falling. Yeah, we do.
It wasn't about his color. I wasn't talking about his color.
We're going to let the youth make his statement, and then the elder to finish up this.
We need,
and we'll come back next week.
Yeah. What about the content of the character?
Yeah, the problem that we're having right now is that so many people are being distracted in regards to Trump and his administration.
Exactly.
That as African people, we have not developed our own agenda.
That's right.
We need our agenda.
Yes.
Okay. We need what we as African people need to do as African people.
A plan.
White people went ahead and elected Donald Trump. We didn't do it. Latino people didn't do it. White people did it.
Right.
All right. They have their agenda. We need our
agenda.
Uncle
Ben and Omarosa in there.
Well, there's some Negroes, there's some aberrant Negroes, of course, and we see a couple of them.
You'd be surprised how many people voted. How many black men? 13% of black people voted for Trump.
That's their prerogative.
But 87, if that's the number, 87% of black people voted for.
But you don't know where the 13% are.
And more didn't vote that voted.
Right.
That's another thing.
That's the problem.
That's even more critical.
That was my comment.
He ran a good game, but here, let's as we pull this together, because we're coming back next week, because next week is actually the birth of El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz, Malcolm X. We can focus on character. We can focus on individuals. We can focus on institutions. But if we do not have a systems analysis, we miss the boat. Obama was produced by the system that needed a black man to save itself. He's not the first one. Black people from the beginning of this nation have been called upon to save it. And then we never got our due. Revolutionary War, Civil War.
I think they gave him the job because they didn't think he could save it.
Well, they were hoping if it fell and it collapsed, it would be blamed on black people. Instead, but we need an African system. That's what Basir and Mchawi was trying to tell us, a plan to put an African system in place. We're not talking about the Africans who have been colonized and who are in a colonial situation.
I'm talking about the ones that are here.
See, we're going to have a discussion on this. The brainwashing process that you and I experience, Africans have had that wherever they are. And we now are fighting to get the African culture and the African brain in our development.
And they got more bleaching cream advertising over there than they have here.
That's right.
They are so far behind us. I don't know why you want to go over there. How about dealing where you were born and raised?
We need to help them.
Africa is in me, and the birth of
Africa is on
my
all of
birth
us.
in the United States or in Jamaica or Brazil is an accident. The Creator created an African. No, you can't cut it off like that. The struggle continues. Contact Dr. Jeffries, and we are setting up. Go on the internet. We're setting up media advocates so that the truth can be told. And you got to get into the books and stop worrying about the looks. Get into your African mind and stop worrying about the behind. And contact us at mediaadvocates.com.
That was good.
Yeah, well, the clips of, and that was interesting.